Hi, everybody. How are you? It is July 5th. For those that are in the United States, it is actually one day after July 4th. So happy July 4th to all those that are from the US. And happy to hear from anyone that's outside of the US as well. Thanks so much for joining. Today, we're going to be talking about digital asset tokenization and technical frameworks and considerations. This is part of the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance Tokenization Interest Groups webinar series. I'm going to talk a little bit about the webinar series and what we plan on doing. My name is Daniel Norkin. I'm a co-chair of the EEA Tokenization Group. I'm also a co-founder of Envision blockchain. So, we have about half an hour on the public side, and then public side, I mean that this is streaming right now to EEA members, it's streaming out to LinkedIn, and I think maybe to some other channels. That section is going to be about 30 minutes, and then we're going to keep the stream going, I believe, just for the EEA member side, and that's going to be another 30 minutes. We're going to talk about some interest group things. We may also field some Q&A, some of the member benefits that come with the EEA. But I'm going to give a quick introduction to what this EEA Tokenization Interest Group is doing. Then for the rest of the presentation, we're going to get into the different types of tokens. And then also, we're going to give kind of like a section that's going to be about the technical side meets the business rules. So again, the presentation does say technical frameworks and considerations. Just to let you know a little bit about myself, I'm not a developer, more on the business side of Web3. So I do teeter both sides, both sides. However, I myself am not a developer. However, I'm going to be talking about probably some technical aspects if this is your first time hearing about tokens or technical frameworks. But I'm going to try to combine all that from the business side, which is probably going to click for most folks. Just a little bit about myself. I co-founded Envision blockchain. We're a partner with Consensus. We're a partner with a couple other organizations that are in the Web3 space. But just to have a little bit of understanding where we're coming from. So Envision blockchain builds applications in the Web3 space. We've been doing so since the early part of 2018. So now transitioning over to the EEA Tokenization Interest Group. So what's the focus? The EEA Tokenization Interest Group started a little while ago. We have a great group of folks that come every 2 weeks, and we discuss different topics that deal with tokenization, and we try to relate them on how they can be bubbled up to the different working groups that exist in the space. So essentially what we do is we discuss issues and industry needs around tokenization that leverage Ethereum technology. What's interesting about that is that there's a lot of platforms in this space, protocols that also leverage the EVM. So if you find yourself in that space, then this talk is also going to be pretty relevant to you as well as the group. So obviously what we do is we take a look at what's available with this technology, what's difficult, where the complexities are, where are the different gaps, and what are the other issues. We have use case discussions and how we can help the members with their interests as it relates to tokenization, whether it's coming up with a proposal for a new standard, whether it's educating the community like we're doing right now through tokenization. It kind of spans the gamut. And I mentioned earlier that we have this tokenization webinar. It's for members and non-members, so happy to see everyone that's a member and non-member. So the series features 5 different presentations. So we have one, which is the, I'll just flip over to this side right here. So we have the first webinar, which already finished. That was the last one that we had. That was a couple weeks ago for the U.S. security laws, regulations, and rules from the other co-chair of the EEA Tokenization Interest Group, Benjamin Bukhari. This is the second one. So if you're just joining, you haven't really missed too much. This is the technical frameworks and considerations. The third webinar, which will be next month, will focus on tokenization frameworks. Webinar 4 will focus on ethical frameworks. And then webinar 5, we're going to put really the 4 different pillars that we discussed, from the laws to the technical frameworks to the tokenomics and ethical frameworks. We're going to put that together for an industry use case analysis. There's a number of the EEA members and group members that have been coming up with use cases that have asked us to analyze, and we can apply these pillars that we're calling, or the webinars 1, 2, 3, 4, the different topics, putting that all together. So, okay, without further ado, let's dive into this. So we're going to start simple. We're going to get a little bit more complicated, but obviously there are many different types of tokens out there. But I want to say that probably the most common tokens that we have, as far as technical frameworks are concerned, we have really fungible tokens and non-fungible tokens. The Web3 space has been dealing with fungible tokens and non-fungible tokens for a very long time. Looking to the right side, you can see a little bit of a breakdown as to what this is. So a fungible token, for example, fungible tokens, it's fractional, could be whole as well. But again, what I'm talking about is just one example, right? They could be whole, they could be fractional. The definitions of fungible tokens could really change. But really, they're, the main function or the main focus is that they can be interchangeable with each other. The value that they have doesn't really matter, and where any owed sum of them from a class has the same value as another sum from the other class. So for example, think of a dollar, think of a cryptocurrency. If you had 1 ETH and I told you, hey, give me your 1 ETH, I'm gonna give you my 1 ETH, you wouldn't really care. You would do it. There wouldn't really be a difference of that. Or if I gave you $1, here's my dollar, give me your dollar. As long as it's $1 for $1, it's interchangeable value. Non-fungible tokens, a little bit different. We all know that non-fungible tokens have been in the news and have been the crave for the past couple of years. But really, the restriction on the token is that there can only be one whole token, a singleton, in that class, and it's not divisible. This behavior is only available to non-fungible token types. For example, these days is original art. However, I want to just put this caveat out there that it's not the only way that a non-fungible token can exist. Again, from a technical perspective, technology is interesting because we have customers that come to us all the time and say, can this be done? It's like, from a technical perspective, lots of things could be done, but not everything needs to be done. So again, it's based on the use case, what you could do. But non-fungible tokens can be whole, they can be singleton, they can be fractional, etc. So again, the definition changes accordingly. An example of a fungible token, for example, within the Ethereum world, is like a protocol token, right? So tokens that are natively connected to the platform, they're commonly referred to as gas, or to power the transactions on a platform. For example, within the Ethereum world, we have ETH, right? So ETH is that fungible token. It's that protocol token. You need ETH in order to power your dApp or to do whatever that you need to do. Another version of a type of token, for example, is a utility token. And again, I'm not going to get into too much of the securities, what was discussed in the previous webinar, but of course that there are very big differences between, for example, a protocol token and a utility token with regards to SEC regulations and whatnot. Again, I'm just sticking purely to the technical frameworks of that. But utility tokens come in many different flavors. This is just 4 examples of utility tokens, but essentially a utility token is something that's needed to perform a specific use case within a specific platform. A very popular utility token one is a stable coin. We're not going to get into the controversies over stable coins, but we all know that has been a controversial topic over the past couple of years, but or the past couple of months, the past couple of weeks, and even days, depending on how you're looking at everything. But regardless, is that the idea behind a stable coin is really valuable in what we're doing these days. So a token designed to maintain a one-to-one ratio with another asset, most commonly a fiat currency like the US dollar, right? So you have one token that equals $1, for example. I'm not going to mention any ones, but you can take a look at the list, and there's a bunch of stable coins out there that perform that utility. We also have usage tokens, so a token that's required to use a service. For example, we have basic attention token, we have Golem, we have 0x, etc. So you need that token in order to do what that service is supposed to do. We have governance token, where governance tokens are, these tokens that could be used to exercise a right. For example, really popular right now, we have DAOs. And DAOs, you exercise your governance through these tokens. And again, that's offered at the protocol level, but that utility is that it's conferred by governance tokens is the right to influence a protocol's direction. For example, Uniswap and Compound have these governance tokens that you can use. And again, it's used to vote on whatever the protocol says that, the voting is for. Work tokens, they give user rights to contribute work to an organization to help its function. So for example, Augur, Keep, TrueBit, etc. So these are different types of tokens. Last but not least, and probably not the only one, so there's some that are missing, please feel free to contribute some of this, because we're always keeping the library full of information. Security tokens, they're also known as tokenized security or investment tokens, are financial securities compliant with SEC regulations. And these are some of the things that Ben was talking about in the previous in the previous webinar last month. So, we just kind of discussed a couple slides about the differences between fungible tokens, non-fungible tokens. We talked about different tokens that exist, from protocol tokens, utility tokens, but this is where things kind of start to get into a little bit of a businessy world, right? So now we have standards. For those that are not familiar with EIPs, Ethereum Improvement Proposals, what they do is they describe standards for the Ethereum platform, including core protocol specifications, client APIs, and contract standards. So if you take a look at the Web3 space and different protocols that exist, there's EIPs all over the place. Sorry, there's not EIPs, there's improvement proposals. So depending on which protocol you're talking about, they could have the different, prefix, blank IPs, right? So this is specifically for the Ethereum improvement proposals. However, they all follow a very similar format, if you will, right? So what's the point of this, right? The point is that whenever a new proposal comes out and it's taken, the purpose is that it's the standard, right? Which is used to prevent the mistakes and the defragmentation of one of the many Ethereum development standards. And one of them, for example, is token interfaces. What's important about that is because when a new smart contract comes out, it still needs to be able to be composable, and it needs to be able to interact with the rest of the ecosystem. So that's why these token interfaces are really important. So for example, when a new token is out there, it needs to be able to work with, for example, decentralized exchanges or new applications that are out there or existing applications and whatnot. So EIPs, once that they're passed, they can go to a number of different tracks is what they call. So one is a standard track, another one is a core track, another one is networking, another one is interface, another one is ERC, another one is meta, and another one is informational. And they all basically talk about whether they're going to lay at the protocol level or they're going to be at how these different nodes or peers communicate with each other, how they interface with each other, what kind of metadata is all part of it, if it's just for educational purposes. The ERC one is all about these tokenized smart contracts and whatnot. So, for example, I'm going to talk about two of, in my opinion, the most common tokens out there. There's an ERC20 token and there's an ERC721 token. Now, don't get me wrong, there's other ones out there, for example, 1155 and 777 and other ones. We're not going to get into those at this point. We're just going to keep it simple. If there's any interest to get into the other token standards, let us know in the chat box, comment, send us an email. We're more than happy to talk about other ones as long as that there's any interest. For example, we were talked about earlier between fungible and non-fungible tokens. I'm sure that this is nothing new to most folks that are here. I see that we have a number of participants in the Zoom chat. I'm sure that there's more that are watching the live stream. But essentially, we have an ERC20 token, which is a fungible token, and an ERC721, which is a non-fungible token. Hence, remember the example I gave earlier with the original art and 721s. I mean, it kind of like marriage made in heaven. That's the technology behind that. So if you're new and you're looking to get started and you're wondering kind of like, where are the smart contracts for you to just start to use? One of the examples that we have is, for example, the Open Zeppelin contracts repository. So it's a library for securing smart contract development, and it is built on a solid foundation of community vetted code, fully audited. And what you'll see here is it implements many different standards, but for purposes of this conversation, we're talking about the ERC20 and the ERC721. It provides a lot of flexibility with regards to different schemes. Allows you to reuse different Solidity components and build your own contracts and your own applications. So this is like a really good place to begin and get started, especially when you want to build your own smart contract. We're going to get to that, like how do you extend smart contracts? What's the purpose of extending smart contracts? A lot of the smart contracts that you see within this ecosystem, a lot of them come from this Open Zeppelin library. So taking a look at some of these business rules, right? So again, I'm not going to get too much into the technical aspects of it, but there are distinct differences why you want to use a 721 versus a ERC20. So again, what I'm asking you to do is, as you're looking at the slide, or you have a use case in mind, or you have a bunch of use cases in mind, maybe you're from the business side, maybe you're from the development side, just kind of think at the business rules what your use case needs to do, right? So for example, there's many similarities between the ERC 721 and the ERC 20. So for example, one of them is that, and I just want to say that there was a question that came up, if there's a way that we can get the deck after the presentation, and yeah, we can make it fully available for sure. So you take a look at the differences, and for example, one of the similarities is mintable, right? So can you mint a token, right? It's like a basic function. This is like a duh moment, right? So of course, both of them can be minted. You may need to pause the token, for example. Let's say that you want to do a smart contract upgrade or something along those lines, and you need to pause it, right? You don't want to upgrade something while something's currently running, right? So yeah, so you have the availability to pause it. Okay, so we have a permit token, which allows you to do something versus not. You have a vote token, which allows you literally to use it for voting, right? It's kind of self-explanatory right there, where you can vote on it. It could be used, for example, in a governance setting, or used in a DAO, for example, to be able to have the behavior where you can vote on it. But that's about where the similarities are. However, there are differences as well. So for example, the ability for something to be auto increment ID, right? So you might need a new serial for each token. For example, that's not available in the ERC20. I guess out of the box, you can always add it. We'll talk about that later. Out of the box with the 721, you can have that ability. So every new NFT then gets its own serial. You also have enumerable, right? You also have a URI storage as well. So for a URI storage and NFTs, having the metadata behind, for example, the artwork, extremely important. We have access control. So access control, both have the ownable and roles. Access control is kind of like a permission from an application side of it. And both of them have the ability to be upgraded. So you have transparent upgradability or UUPS. They both deal with proxies. They both deal with the way that you upgrade the smart contract. However, there's differences between complexities, gas costs, etc. I know that we're running close to the time for the public, so I'm going to go through this. So, if you're new, I just want to put this on I guess put a little plug there for the team at Open Zeppelin. We appreciate everything that they do for the open source world. So obviously, should you want to go ahead and create your smart contract, they have this pretty neat wizard right here. I'm just going to go ahead and play this video. So that you wanted to create an ERC20, right? And you may not be a developer. You can go ahead, click the different features that you want, and you could see it kind of builds a smart contract. It imports from the Open Zeppelin library what you want. You can go ahead and download the Solidity code right there. You can go ahead and deploy it. Same thing for the 721. So we have the 721. You can name the tokens, of course. You can, make it mintable, auto increment, etc. As you're going through these different pieces, you could see how it kind of is generating the Solidity code, and you can go ahead and download it. So what's interesting here is that this is kind of like out of the box. Remember I said like there's out of the box? But what happens when you want to use an existing token standard, but you need some more sauce, right? You need something extra in order to do what you need the use case to do. So, for example, I'm going to give a real live example. So there is something out there. For those that are not familiar with it, there's a new EIP 4910 draft out there that's been implemented in Tree Trunk IO. For those that don't know Tree Trunk IO, it's in partnership with Consensus. Envision is behind some of the development over there. The whole point, it's an NFT marketplace that allows for royalties to be maintained on chain. There's a lot of other key features, but for the purposes of this presentation, this is kind of like where I can make a comparison, I guess, to some of the things that we discussed earlier. So for example, in the NFT space, there's 721s, right? As I was saying before, and there's artwork that you can kind of associate the 721 with. However, the 721 doesn't do anything with regards to management of royalties. There are other EIPs out there that might make a signal, for example, that deal with the royalty being, sold, but for the most part, most royalties are dealt in a centralized storage. So here's kind of the point that we're talking about, that it's like, you need to understand the technical frameworks, you need to understand the business side of it to be able to start taking these smart contracts that come out of the box and be able to extend them a little bit further. So for example, the extension of the 721, the standard for NFTs to correctly define, process, and pay on-chain royalties from NFT sales. Many within the Web3 space know Dr. Andre Freund, who had authored this EIP 4910 draft, goes ahead and said, I'm just going to quote it right here. So the proposal builds on the Open Zeppelin smart contract toolbox. The the architecture and extends it to include a royalty account management, CRUD, royalty balance and payments management, simple trading capabilities, listing, delisting, buying, and capabilities to trace trading on exchanges. The royalty management capabilities allow for hierarchical royalty structures referred to as royalty trees to be established by logically connecting a parent NFT to its children and recursively enabling NFT children to have more children. And you can go ahead and take a look at the EIP. I have a link right here and we'll share the deck afterwards. But it's like, what was actually extended in that in the EIP 4910 that's outside of the 721. So here's some new concept, right? We're not going to break it down to the code level, but if you want to take a look at the code level, you can go ahead and take a look at the reference implementation that I listed right there. You can see that it's open source for sure. But for example, the 721 doesn't have these concepts that the use case needed to introduce. And here's where, again, to understand the business side of it, it's important. Then you can go ahead and meet the technical side. So for example, there needs to be a royalty account where the royalty account is attached to each NFT through the token ID and consists of several sub-accounts, which can be accounts for individuals or other royalty accounts. A royalty account is identified by an account identifier. There needed to be an account type, specifies a royalty account sub-account, belongs to an individual or another royalty account. If there's another royalty account as a royalty account sub-accounts, the allocated balance needs to be reallocated to sub-accounts making up the reference royalty account, right? And I'm not going to read this word for word, but for those that are more, more interested in how you can deal with extension of smart contracts, definitely take a look at this. It's a good thing for you to take a look at the reference implementation to see how the 721 was extended to meet a new standard. Or for those that are just interested in how do you deal with royalties on chain, you go ahead and take a look at this too. It deals with royalty splits, royalty balances, sub-account, royalty balance, token types, asset IDs, and parents. So we're just about at time over here. We said it was going to be about 30 minutes for the public side of it. So we're just getting up to that minute right now. What are some of the next steps? I mean, feel free to submit questions directly to myself, daniel.norkin@blockchain.com. Happy to field any questions that come that way. Obviously, stay tuned for the EEA's Tokenization Interest Group Webinar Series. You can keep up with it, I'm sure, by liking, following, subscribing to some of the newsletters. Again, for those that are joining now that weren't there at the beginning, the first webinar we focused on was the U.S. security laws, rules, and regulations. That's done. Technical frameworks and considerations. Technically, that's done. The tokenomics framework is the next one. We have an ethical framework, which is the one after that. And obviously webinar 5, we're going to put all these together as we've been collecting the use cases from within the interest group to put all these learnings together on a couple of these different types of use cases. For those that are interested in how to get involved, the EEA welcomes additional input on this work along with others. So we definitely welcome you to participate in the tokenization interest group. If you are non-EEA member, feel free to reach out to james.harsh@eeth-alliance.org and visit the EEA Tokenization Interest Group page that we have. It's eeth-alliance.github.io/tokenization. And again, if you're an EEA member, kind of already in the group, if you will, so feel free to reach out to us. You can either reach out to EEA Secretariat, you can reach out to myself, you can reach out to Ben or anyone else that and they're more than happy to go ahead and provide an introduction. So again, thank you so much for joining. I hope to hear from everybody afterwards. Take care.